Morning YouTube, Sister Kate here, taking my walk down to the duck area to let the ducks out this morning. I have a busy day ahead of me. I am going to be getting mulch and buying groceries, so my day is pretty much full. I've been watching and studying, researching for this next video for the last couple of days, and it's on before a civil war. So I know there are people online who are saying we're ripe for a civil war in the United States. And on a certain level, you could say that. There's civil unrest, there's division in the culture, there's cultural change happening, along with a pandemic, an election, fires, etc. I've talked about all that in live streams and so on. And I thought, all right, well, let's look at some of the things that run up to our first Civil War. Because we've only had the one, and it caused a huge division in the country. You had people's families split, where a father and a son might be fighting for either son on one side, father on the other, families torn apart, lots of wounded, disease, killed so many of the soldiers fighting in the war. And our country was only, about 75 years old. That's not very old for a country. And our country was also not nearly as big as it is now. It was, it wasn't the original 13 colonies, but it certainly wasn't the full 50. And there were issues fomenting in the different countries, in the different parts of the country, that came to a head, including a sort of stylized agricultural versus industrial mindset and politics and so on. And that was a huge part of what that fight was about states' rights. The Constitution was only 70 years old as well, and there were still people who wanted to have a weak central government and strong states, and people who wanted a strong central government and weak states. And there had been elections and duels and just all sorts of drama in the country. So then I wanted to look at some specific things, and there was a there was a famous border war out on the state line of Missouri and Kansas called Bleeding Kansas. And that particular war in the country was over slavery. It was also because Missouri was a slave state and Kansas was about to be ratified as a state, and the people who were involved in the local politics were on both sides. There were people who wanted Kansas to be a free state and people who wanted Kansas to be a slave state. And so there were actual fights, there was property damage, there were murders on the border. And it was started initially by the free staters, the ones who wanted Kansas to be free of slavery. And they came across the border into Missouri, which was a slave state, and they damaged property, and they attacked families, and they burned things down and stole things all along that border. The Jesse James family was one of the families that was affected in that border war, and they were in a slave state, and the free staters came and attacked the family, hung the stepfather, shot the mother in the arm. That might have been U.S. Marshals. Anyway, they hung the stepfather almost till he died, and the boys cut him down and they revived him, but he was never the same after that. And that kind of started the whole Jesse James gang thing going on. Their bank robberies were retribution for the attack on their family. And over $1 million in today's money was damaged or stolen along that border of Missouri during that war. And John Brown was a free stater who was causing some of those problems. He came across the border and murdered some people in Marais de Seine and caused a lot of unrest. And then he went, to Harper's Ferry. But the culmination of that whole situation was when the border ruffians, the pro-slavery guys came across and burned Kansas and murdered about 200 and I forget exactly how many men in Kansas. Just came in and, you know, damaged buildings and so on. And after that, I believe U.S. Marshals got involved in it. Kansas was, you know, Kansas ended up being a free state, and the local politics kind of ironed itself out too. There was also some fear in that area that landed people with money were going to get more votes and have more say in the whole matter than people who did not have land or were poor. And so the politics was around that as well. But then I looked at the whole country. Did we have war before the Civil War? Yes, we had several wars. Oh yeah, this person's talking too. Yeah? International wars, you say? Huh? Fighting on the Barbary Coast. I see. America had fought with Britain in 1812, fought along the Barbary Coast, had many separate, smaller wars with the natives in our country, the Arikara War, and so on. And then there was another event in 1857 where a boat, a ship, carrying gold from the gold rush of 1848, you remember that, the 49ers, was coming around Panama, and the boat was carrying 30,000 pounds of gold. It was called the USS or SS Central America, and the captain's name was Herndon, last name Herndon. There's a little town up in North Virginia named that name. And that ship was caught off the coast of Florida by a hurricane and sunk with 30,000 pounds of gold in it, and it caused a huge flux in the economy of the country, because at that time our dollars were backed by gold, and so that was a huge loss, and it caused an economic fall, and that was right before. So are we set up right now to have a civil war? Do we have wars in our borders? Are we fighting little wars outside of our borders? Have we had an economic crash? I would say not necessarily. We've had the natural disasters. We've had the fires and such. The world has had the locusts going on, so the world is very unsettled. But before the pandemic hit, Trump had our economy humming right along, so I'm not sure those conditions are right for a civil war. But as far as a social thing, yeah, the media is whipping up the two sides. They're saying, shush up and feed us. The media is whipping up the two different sides, the BLM and Antifa versus, you know, the conservatives like Mike Pence. And they're trying to cause civil unrest. That can lead to a civil war, but like I told somebody else, with 50 states involved, it's going to take a whole lot more than that, I think, for this country to get moving in their direction of a civil war. Because I also think the press and the liberals don't understand the depth and the ferocity of what war really is and the devastation it causes. So I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I know there's a social change happening, and I've talked about that in other live streams. Let me show you the boys over here, and then I'll get them out and feed them, because they're some good-looking fellas, these guys. What's up, guys? If I can get them in there. Back in there. Got lots of different colors. Look it, fall is here. It's just lovely out in the woods. All right, thanks for watching, y'all. Hey, Krew, the t-shirt is coming. I'm almost sure I'll be picking it up in town today. So I'll be making a video about that really soon. Bless you. Shalom.